exposed. The sinister rules of a haunted oil field in Alberta, unexplained terrors revealed. Emily Johnson felt the chill sweep through the town like a sinister breath as the sun dipped below the horizon. Shadows stretched longer, wrapping around her home, a dilapidated relic in a once vibrant Alberta. Rumors surfaced about the oil field closing, whispers of ghostly spirits and dark trades. But now, darkness slithered into every corner, and Emily, a single mother trying to save her 2 kids, was right in the eye of the storm. Just next door, Mr. Hawkins watched with an unsettling smile the man promising jobs. Yet she sensed he was tied to something far more sinister. Breath held tight, she pushed her children, Ben and Lily, closer to her heart, as if shielding them from unseen horrors. Late at the diner, where laughter once echoed, dread crept in like a thief. Ben stood behind the counter, the grease-stained aprons a poor mask over the tense air. As he wiped down the countertop, laughter turned to silence, the old jukebox shutting down with an ominous thud. It was then he heard it, a whisper, a hushed tone drifting toward him, laced with urgency. "Yes, coming," it seemed to say. Shivers spidered up his spine. Was it just the old place playing tricks? Or was it more? He shook his head, trying to dismiss it until the dim light flickered, casting odd shadows that lurked beyond his vision. Days turned into a haze of haunted nights. Pets disappeared, a cat, then a dog. Paws that once played in the sun vanished, swallowed by fear. Mrs. Fenton, their neighbor, now peered through her curtained window. Her eyes glinted with suspicion, a hint of a smirk that didn't sit right. Emily made her way to the local police, but their dismissive smiles, mocking murmurs, and jokes rang hollow against her panic. "You're just a scared mom," they seemed to say without saying it. But she knew. Mr. Hawkins had nudged this chaos, his polished charm curtains hiding something darker beneath. One evening, solitude wrapped around Emily as she sat alone in the diner, staring into an empty cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Ben was hustled away for another late shift, leaving her with her weary thoughts and the flutter of unrest in her gut. She caught sight of a shadow outside, a flicker of movement beneath the flickering neon lights. Anxiety clenched her chest. Just the wind, she reassured herself, trying to keep the heaviness at bay, but it settled deeper. Around her, the townsfolk whispered, mistrust threading through their conversations. And then, she found it, a dusty book hidden deep in the attic, words of your whispering tales of vengeful spirits born of unholy dealings with the land. Each story twisted the growing unease in her gut. Was Mr. Hawkins just a greedy businessman, or was he an unwitting pawn for dark forces? Fumbling through the pages, she could feel dread seep into her bones, and an urgency stirred in her heart. The more she read, the more tangled she felt with the history, a history that spoke of lives lost, angered spirits seeking retribution. When Ben staggered home one night, face pale and eyes wide, claiming he saw something lurking in the diner's shadows, the air grew thick with fear. Emily's heart pounded against her chest, straining to hold back the questions pressing on her mind. How could her little family, struggling just to stay afloat, stand against this rising tide of darkness? As terror enveloped her, the door creaked. A sinister, lingering shadow loomed at their threshold. Mr. Hawkins, grinning like a wolf eyeing its prey. "You're just beginning to understand what's at stake," he whispered, the tension crackling in the air, leaving Emily with a piercing question that wrapped around her like a vice. How far would she go to protect her children from the darkness that hungered for them? Emily's heart hammered in her chest. Mr. Hawkins stood there, an eerie calm exuding from him as though he knew something she desperately wanted to unravel. She backed away, clutching Ben and Lily, who clung to her side, their eyes wide with terror. "What do you want?" she managed to stammer, a tremor weaving through her words. "Oh, dear Emily," he drawled, his voice syrupy sweet. "It's not what I want. It's what's owed from the past. You do well to remember that this land has seen so much blood. And blood, my dear, demands more blood." Each word dripped with malice, an ancient weight pressing against her mind. Emily felt her breath quicken, her instincts screaming for her to flee. But where would she go? The town, the very soil they walked on, was alive with dark secrets and unspeakable horrors. That night, sleep eluded her as the shadows in her home danced and murmured. The creaking floorboards echoed like whispered threats, and every gust of wind felt like a warning. Lily curled up beside her, the innocence in her slumber contrasting sharply with the dread gnawing at Emily's insides. During the following days, tension thickened in town. A chill settled in the air, stifling any warmth the sun might offer. The sounds of laughter were drowned by murmurs of terror. People began barricading their doors, and mothers held their children tight, casting sideways glances at darkened windows where only vacuous stares watched back. Ben worked under the watchful eye of Mr. Hawkins, but Emily could see the shift within him, his laughter traded for a wooden stare, as if a part of him had already succumbed to fear. One evening, while searching for answers in the town library, Emily stumbled upon a faded photograph of the oil field workers from decades past. Their faces were shadowy, and their eyes seemed to glimmer with a haunting light. Beneath the image was a caption that read, "The Lost Souls." It sent a shiver down her spine, a connection she hadn't anticipated. What if this evil was not just tied to Hawkins but to every inch of land soaked in oil, greed, and despair? Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a shaking voice beckoned from behind her. "You shouldn't be here, it's not safe." It was Mrs. Fenton, her wild hair framing an expression of pure fear. "They're coming for you, just like they came for the others. You have to leave the town before it's too late." With that, she scuttled back into the shadows, leaving Emily alone with the chilling whispers and flickering lights. Emily raced home, thoughts swirling. What did she know of the others? Was Hawkins the puppet master or just another victim like her? Frantic, she tried to piece together the history that had festered in the shadows. When she reached the diner, it was dark, the neon sign flickering wildly. Ben usually left it unlocked, but tonight, the door stood ominously closed. "Ben," she shouted, her voice thick with panic. Then she saw something moving inside, a dark shape, cold and twisting. Fear clutched her chest as she instinctively reached for the doorknob. But then, an agonizing scream shattered the silence, a scream that could only belong to her son. Her heart froze. No, the dread coiled tighter, each nerve in her body igniting as she rushed for the door. What lay on the other side? Would it be her boy or the end of everything she fought for? Emily's breath caught in her throat as she twisted the knob, terror boiling in her heart. The door swung open, revealing a darkness thicker than oil, waiting to drag her into its depths. What would she confront inside? The truth could unravel everything, or seal their doom. The door creaked as it swung wide, revealing a void that swallowed the flickering streetlights outside. Emily hesitated, the screams still echoing in her mind. "Ben," she called again, desperation creeping into her voice. As she stepped inside, dread filled her with every cautious movement. The diner was unrecognizable in its state of decay. Tables lay overturned, cracked plates scattered like broken promises on the floor. Frigid air brushed against her skin, sending a shiver coursing through her. Shadows pooled in every corner, whispering secrets she wasn't ready to uncover. "Ben," she cried, her heart racing. The silence was oppressive, each heartbeat vibrating through her chest like a war drum echoing in a cavern. Faint sounds reached her ears, soft whimpering, barely audible. Emily followed it, moving toward the back where the kitchen lay. The smell of something acrid hung in the air, an awful blend of oil and rot that made her stomach churn. As she approached the kitchen door, it swung open, seemingly of its own volition. Beads of sweat trickled down her forehead. On the other side, she found Lily huddled beside the lifeless body of a man. Tears streamed down her daughter's face, reflecting the dim light like shattered glass. "Mommy!" Lily cried, extending her arms out to Emily, as if seeking protection from the unknown horrors surrounding them. Emily rushed forward, her instincts driving her to comfort her daughter. "Lily, what happened? Where's Ben?" she asked urgently, pulling her daughter close. "He was here and then he wasn't." Lily sobbed, her voice trembling. "I heard him yelling, 'Mom,' and then he just disappeared." Emily felt a chill sweep over her as her gaze fell upon the face of the dead man, a worker. She realized, one of the lost souls from the photograph. Something felt palpably wrong, a connection thrumming in the air. "We have to find him," Emily urged, her voice cracking. "We can't stay here." As they turned to leave, a harsh wind burst through the open door, slamming it shut behind them. Emily's heart raced. The shadows deepened, closing around them, like hands reaching out, threatening to pull them into the void. "Mom, look," Lily pointed to the corner of the kitchen. There, in the flickering gloom, stood Mr. Hawkins, his face obscured by darkness. He loomed over them, eyes glimmering with a malevolence that chilled Emily to the bone. "Oh, dear Emily," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You thought you could escape the past? This land won't let you go. It demands more sacrifices." Emily's pulse quickened. "What have you done?" Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "What did you want from Ben?" He took a step closer, shadows warping around him like smoke. "What is owed must be paid." Just then, an anguished scream ripped through the air, familiar. Emily's heart sank. It was Ben. The sound echoed in her mind, hauntingly sweet and full of dread. "We have to go, Mommy," Lily cried, trembling. "He is in danger." Panic surged as Emily turned to the door, only to find it blocked by an unseen force. The room spun around her as she struggled, breath quickening. "Let him go," Emily yelled, her voice breaking through the veil of fear. "You can't keep him." The shadows coalesced, twisting and writhing, eager to envelop her. But just as despair threatened to consume her, a whisper drifted through the air, soft yet piercing. "Help me, Ben." Emily screamed, lunging toward the shadows. A sudden brightness flared, illuminating the diner with a blinding light. The darkness faltered, retreating as the figure of her son emerged. But what was this light, and who truly stood with them? Caught between light and shadow, Emily grasped for answers, knowing peril loomed closer. What role did Hawkins play in the tragic fate of those swept into this nightmare? As the world around her began to distort and vanish, she faced a terrifying truth. They might have less time than she thought. Would she save Ben or lose him forever? The bright light pulsed and flickered, casting grotesque shadows on the dilapidated walls. Emily shielded her eyes and squinted through the glare, trying to discern Ben's form in the haze. He looked disoriented, drenched in sweat, yet his spirit still armed with sorrowful defiance. But what surrounded him? The kitchen morphed into pandemonium, the sounds of the diner twisting into agonized wails and laughter that echoed from every corner. Emily stumbled, catching her breath as she fought against the tide of terror churning in her chest. "Ben," she called again, but the voice was swallowed by the despair rising around them. In that chaotic moment, a shadow darted past Ben, dark and serpentine. Emily felt her blood freeze. The fleeting figure was too fast, too slick to be human. It slithered back toward Mr. Hawkins at the edge of the fading light, merging with the darkness that clung to him like a shroud. "Do you see now, dear Emily?" Hawkins drawled, his smile unsettling as he relished her fear. "Fear feeds the darkness. It thrives on despair. You've brought your child into my domain, and now it is time to pay." "No," Emily screamed, her heart pounding. The very notion clawed at her sanity. "I won't let you take him. We're leaving." Before she could make a move, Hawkins raised a hand, and a deafening crack echoed through the kitchen as the light flickered violently. Emily's world seemed to yawn, skewing into a surreal tableau. The shadows contorted, morphing into faces she recognized. They were workers from the photographs, mouths agape in silent screams, eyes wide with unshed tears. "Mommy," Lily whimpered, curling into her, clinging desperately as sheer panic rippled through her small frame. "Stay close to me," Emily urged, drawing Lily against her. Clenching her fists, she felt a surge of resolve despite the encroaching dread. They had to find a way out. With all her strength, Emily lunged toward Ben. "Trust me," she yelled, pulling the light around her like a shield against the ominous blackness creeping in. In that moment, she saw him, her son. His eyes were filled with both hope and anguish. "Mom, we have to go. It's not safe here." She reached for him, but Hawkins extended his hand, fingers twisting into grotesque shapes, a dark invitation beckoning them deeper into the nightmare. "You can't escape what belongs to me, Emily. The price was never yours to decide." A shattering scream erupted from the shadows as Ben curled away from it, grasping the edge of the fading light. Emily felt the weight of choice crashing down on her. Save her son or face the wrath of a force that craved their very souls. The chilling silence followed, wrapping around them like a vice. Shadows writhed in anticipation, the air thickening with malice. "Mom!" Ben howled, desperate. "I can't hold on." Emily's heart raced. That scream ignited something within her. It clashed violently against the dread clawing at her core. "Ben, I'm coming," she cried, shoving through an invisible barrier. But shadows tightened around her, drawing her toward Hawkins. His laughter echoed like a sinister melody. "Your fate is sealed. The long-forgotten need to be fed." In the battle between light and dark, the chamber imploded in a furious wave of screams. Everything trembled as Emily fought against the grasp of despair. Time itself felt elastic as she reached for her son. And then, in a blinding flash, everything went black. When Emily could see again, they stood inexplicably outside the diner, the air still, heavy with their shared breaths. But a hollow dread knotted in her gut. A nameless horror slithered around her, whispering promises of the choices she would have to make. "Mom?" Lily whispered, trembling again. "Are we safe?" "No," Emily muttered, dread creeping back like a shadow. "What have we awakened?" As the familiar sound of gnashing teeth and hushed whispers echoed from within the diner, she realized the true horror was far from over. In the depths of her heart, she feared that something dark now shared their path, awaiting the moment they would stumble again. Would she find the strength to confront one final truth, or would they surrender to the sins of the past? The air shifted, heavy like the aftermath of a storm. Emily's instincts screamed at her to flee, yet her feet felt glued to the cracked pavement. The diner loomed grimly behind them, its glow now a sickly yellow halo, exuding an even more ominous energy. "Mom, we have to go now." Ben's voice cut through the suffocating tension. He grabbed her arm, his grip surprisingly strong for his age. "Please." They turned, but the path ahead was cluttered broken glass, twisted signs, remnants of a life that once thrived here. Emily could hear it again, the whispers now louder, clawing at her brain. Words floated through the air, indistinct yet chilling, like they were warning her or summoning her to return. "Mommy, I don't like this place." Lily's small voice trembled. The shadows held a death grip on her resolve. "Me neither," Emily replied, forcing a smile, but the uncertainty bubbled beneath the surface. They had escaped the diner, or so she thought, but it was as if the darkness had followed, coiling around them like a snake. Suddenly, a high-pitched giggle pierced the shadows, and Emily's heart lurched. It wasn't Ben or Lily. The laughter echoed far too wide, too warped, reverberating through the very ground beneath them. A flicker at the corner of her eye caused her to whirl around, but no one was there, just the diner glaring with empty, hungry eyes. "Stay close," she whispered, retreating back a step as her fears seemed to take form. She felt the gnashing teeth of memories and regrets gnawing at her mind. With a newfound urgency, Emily scanned for any sign of a safe path. A flicker of hope ignited when she spotted an older pickup truck parked at the far edge of the lot. It looked worn and weather-beaten, though it might still run. "Ben, Lily, over there." She pointed, her voice lifting slightly. Forcing her legs to move, she led the way, heart pounding as the whispers grew fainter but more sinister as they approached the truck. Emily's breath quickened. The truck door hung ajar, swaying slightly as if inviting them inside. But there was something wrong. Pale, bony fingers were wrapped around the steering wheel, a patch of blackened flesh scarred against the faded leather. "Get back," she shouted, yanking Lily and Ben behind her just as the figure inside turned, revealing hollow eyes and a haunting grin. The grotesque shape twisted with a contorted smile, filling the air with the rancid smell of decay. "They taste sweeter if you're afraid," It hissed, eyes glinting with malice. "Run!" Emily screamed, pulling her children away from the horror. They raced past the truck, avoiding the confrontation, but the shadows screamed in protest, trying to snatch them back into the abyss. The trio sprinted down the gravel path, the whispers clawing for their ankles like sinister hands. Emily felt her heart in her throat, pulse pounding in her ears. What had they awakened? How deep did this nightmare go? A burst of adrenaline surged through her as they reached the edge of the lot, the woods looming just beyond a dense, trembling wall of trees that murmured secrets of their own. "Mom, I don't want to go in there." Ben shivered. "Neither do I, but we don't have a choice." Emily shot back, pushing forward, fighting the instinct to stop. As they slipped into the forest, shadows danced among the trees, an ethereal ballet. Emily took a breath, and the air was thick, electric. A wind rustled through, whispering voices tumbling through the branches, foreboding secrets brushing against her skin in cold, clammy sweeps. Suddenly, Lily stopped short, eyes wide. A pale figure stood just beyond the tree line, features obscured yet oddly familiar. "Mom, look!" she gasped, pointing with trembling fingers. Emily's breath stilled, dread pooling in her stomach. "Can't be," she said, voice shaking. In that moment, they all heard it, a chilling, spine-tingling voice that reverberated through the air, calling out her name. "Emily!" The darkness was creeping closer, and they felt the inescapable pull of whatever malice lurked just out of sight, hungry to consume. Wrapped in terror, she turned to her children, knowing they needed a plan to fight or flee, but the choices were becoming more perilous. Would they risk returning to face the horror behind them, or plunge deeper into the darkness, searching for safety amongst its shadows? The choice loomed ahead, a desperate path shrouded in uncertainty. "What do we do now?" she whispered, trembling as the woods closed in around them, the trees breathing whispers of their own. But deep down, she knew one thing: whatever dark force lingered, it marked their souls, and it wouldn't rest until they faced the truth of their fears. What had they truly awakened this time, and might it consume them entirely before the sun rose again? Emily's heart raced as she stared into the pale figure beyond the trees. It stood still, almost motionless, but she felt the tension in the air, a fearful energy crackling like static electricity. The voice calling her name twisted something inside her, pulling at the threads of her memory, beckoning her toward an unseen fate. "Mom, please," Ben squeaked, his grip tightening on her hand, eyes darting as if danger lurked in every shadow. Lily, still clutching her teddy bear, glanced up at Emily, her innocence tangled with confusion and fear. "Stay close," Emily managed to whisper, forcing the words through lips that felt frozen. She inched forward, drawn by that hauntingly familiar presence. Even as uncertainty gnawed at her stomach, the figure shifted, revealing more of its form, the features twisted and vague, the darkness morphing around it like smoke. A pang of recognition struck Emily as she caught the faint outline of a face she thought lost forever. "No, it can't be you," she uttered, breath hitching painfully in her throat. The forest seemed to grow heavier, the shadows congealing, thickening around them. The whispering voices heightened, mingling with the rustling leaves, a cacophony of torment that echoed the barbed memories trapped in her mind. "Come to me." Emily, the figure beckoned, the voice soothing yet rich with malice. "What do you want?" Emily shouted into the void, bravely facing the phantom that seemed to levitate just beyond the edge of the wood. "Want?" The figure chuckled darkly, sending chills racing down her spine. "You already know what I want. You awakened me. Run." Emily clawed the back of Ben's shirt, jerking him and Lily further back, heart hammering as panic surged through her veins. They scrambled backward, stumbling on the uneven ground, branches snapped ominously as they retreated. And again, Emily heard it, the high-pitched giggle, now closer, mocking them. The trees around them multiplied, shadows twisting into impossible shapes. What once was a sanctuary in the early evening light turned into a labyrinth of despair, a living nightmare with each step. "Mom!" Ben cried, dragging his sister along. "It's not safe here." She wanted to agree, yet the pull of the figure grew stronger in her mind. It was as if their memories intertwined, binding them together with a dark thread. Clenching her jaw, she fought against the urge to succumb to end their frantic retreat. They veered to the left, away from the figure who continued to draw near. But the forest morphed again. As if it were a living being, trees that had moments ago seemed harmless now loomed like sentinels, closing ranks around them, blocking the path to freedom. Over there, Lily pointed wildly, eyes wide with fear, as she caught sight of a faint glow flickering between the trees. A flash of hope ignited in Emily as they pushed toward it. But as they drew closer, the glow turned sickly, illuminating the horror of what lay before them. Broken signs, abandoned vehicles, remnants of lives half-remembered pulsing with a dark energy. An oil field silent now, but bearing witness to secrets long buried. Emily, the voice reverberated once more. Cold dread gripped her. It wasn't just a name, it was a promise, a threat. Before she could deliberate, something prickled at the back of her neck. She was no longer alone in her flight. From the edges of the darkness, shapes began flitting between the trees, figures half seen, their malicious whispers echoing the name she dreaded most. Emily, desperate, she yanked Ben and Lily along, but fear clawed at her insides. Whatever had stirred within the shadows was now awake, and judging by the gnawing sensation in the air, it wouldn't stop until it reclaimed what was rightfully its own. "Mom, I'm scared," Ben cried, and behind them, the chilling laughter continued, unsettling and relentless. With no other option, they dashed into the thick of the oil field, the glow of the machinery casting an unnatural light across their hurried escape. But every glance back revealed more unsettling figures emerging from the trees, gnarled hands outstretched, hoping to catch them in their grasp, a reminder that the darkness was relentless. "Hold on tight," Emily shouted, pushing further into the heart of chaos. They had to find an escape, but the shadows were gaining ground. Around her, the air grew thick, as if the darkness itself was swallowing the very light that remained, and time itself seemed to warp and stretch with trepidation. Emily felt the panic welling up. What they had uncovered here, the shadows closing in, it was just the beginning. They were no longer running from the diner. They had stepped into something far more profound, and they were running out of time. "Mom, look!" Lily screamed, pointing as another vision flickered into view. There, partially concealed within the twisted trees, something glimmered, a key. But was it a way out, or was it another trap? Instinct urged Emily forward, yet every cell in her body screamed to deter her. Would that key lead to safety or doom? The size of the decision loomed over them, as dark shapes edged closer, shadows stealing away hope and light. "Mom!" Ben's voice broke through the inflection of whispering voices, a desperate plea that resonated into the unknown. Emily hesitated, caught in the brink of danger and the sheer weight of the barren truth hovering above. Whatever they had awakened in this darkened forest, it had shifted the balance of their reality. And now, they stood on the threshold, deeper into chaos than ever before, her breath caught, heart racing fiercely. Was there still a chance to escape? Or were they on the cusp of something beyond their darkest fears? Emily's instincts screamed at her to run. The glowing key flickered in the shadows, a beacon of hope twisted with dread. She could almost feel its cold metal against her palm. And yet, the shadows pressed in tighter, encroaching on their little trio, dark fingers stretching through the forest with a sinister intent. "Mom, we need to go." Ben tugged at her arm, his voice trembling, the weight of terror dragging them backward. Behind them, shadows merged and churned, laughter bubbling beneath the dark canopy like a rotten stream. It was malevolent, a mockery of the children's innocence. Serrated edges of their fears laid bare. "Okay, let us go." Emily's breath came in sharp bursts, frantic heat painting her cheeks as adrenaline surged through her veins. She pivoted away from the key, knowing deep down that whatever trap it presented wasn't worth the risk. But it wasn't simply about escaping anymore. It felt like they were embodying a haunting itself, running through twisted nightmares of lost time. The maze of trees shifted chaotically around them, closing in as if aware of the intent in their flight. "Where do we go?" Lily whimpered, halting them momentarily, eyes wide and darting in every direction, searching for guidance, for safety. Emily's heart sank watching her daughter's trust begin to splinter beneath the weight of fear. "Follow me," Emily said, forcing confidence into her voice. They needed to get away from the encroaching darkness. The shimmer of machinery danced just ahead, a false promise twinkling through the haunting green of the oil field. They sprinted forward, the uneven ground threatening to trip them. Behind, the shadows surged, a tide of hungry gloom snapping and clawing at their heels. Emily could feel them, could almost hear their breath, cold and rancid. The shadows had become something alive, something that yearned to claim them. Ahead, the lights pulsed, illuminating the sprawling remnants of the oil field. Rusted vehicles stood like grave markers, relics of lives once brimming with mundane joys. Faint lights flickered in the distance, ghostly apparitions casting dread shadows across the debris. And then came the whispers, the thin, sibilant sounds that curled around her ears. "You can't hide, Emily, we know what you did." They slithered into her mind, igniting a gnawing dread in her stomach. Ben squeezed her hand tighter, his small fingers trembling. "Mom, what do they mean? What did we do?" The question pulled her back. The pull of that figure, the love she lost, was woven tightly into their escape. Memories rushed through her, a torrent of warmth and pain. "I don't know," she said, slower now, fear clawing at her throat. "I don't know, but we need to keep moving." She glanced back. The figure was nearer, its mouth curving into a grin that promised ruin. "Emily," it called again, a haunting lullaby that sent shivers skittering down her spine. As they neared a set of twisted metal pipes, she saw it too clearly, the markings, symbols, crude shapes etched in the rust that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "Mom!" Lily squeaked, pointing at an opening, barely visible, a rift in the solid wall of corrosion. "In there. Go!" Emily shouted. They turned, barreling toward the gap, the air thick with claustrophobia and an encroaching darkness that reached for their very souls. But just as they dove into the darkness, feet scrambling over jagged edges, the world exploded in a howl. Shadows swarmed behind, a dark wave crashing forth as if the forest itself had ripped open with fury. The whispers crescendoed, maddening, tumbling into the opening. Emily hit the ground hard, scraping her palms against the gritty earth. Ben and Lily landed beside her, gasping. The darkness inside was alive, almost vibrating, pressing against her from all angles. "Is it safe?" Ben murmured, looking around at the little light filtering through the cracks. The sounds of chaos still clashed like a breaking tide outside. "I hope so," Emily managed, but doubt gnawed at her mind. They were trapped between a haunting past and an uncertain future, a fault line of terror stretching into the unknown. Suddenly, she noticed a faint glow at the end of the tunnel. Something pulsed with light, and instinctively, Emily felt drawn. But as she crawled closer, a weight fell on her heart. What if it led them deeper into the nightmare? Was it a path to freedom, or the very heart of the darkness itself? With her heart pounding like thunder in her ears, she hesitated, wondering if they had only leaped from one trap into another. Was the glow a way out or another fractured promise? What awaited at the tunnel's end? The tunnel felt claustrophobic, a dark belly that wrapped around them like a shroud. Emily's heart raced in sync with the pulsating glow ahead. Fear and hope waged war within her. Driven by some primal instinct, she crawled toward the light, clenching her teeth to keep steady. "Mom, what do you see?" Ben whispered, clutching Lily's arm with wide, frightened eyes. They were small shadows against the fear around them. Just a little further, Emily breathed out, forcing herself to inch closer, torn between the desire to escape and the dread of what lay ahead. The whispers outside had quieted, but the oppressive silence yawned open around them, heavy and pregnant with the unknown. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat, rhythmic yet chaotic. It drew her in, thrumming with a dangerous allure. She blinked against the brightness, each pulse slicing through the darkness. As they reached the end, the light erupted into a dazzling array of colors. Blues and greens swirled together in an unnatural dance, casting ghostly shadows that twisted and curled as if alive. They were in a small chamber, walls faintly shimmering with what looked like oil but smoother, slicker, glistening as though painted in liquid nightmares. Lily's eyes filled with wonder despite her terror. "Wow, Mom! Look at it! It's beautiful!" But Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Beauty here was a mask, hiding something sinister underneath. "Don't touch anything," Emily warned, her voice barely above a whisper. Caution danced alongside fear, a treacherous duo pushing her instincts. Then they heard it, a low hum vibrating through the air, like a distant train echoing through the ground. It grew louder, more tangible, sending shivers through Emily's spine. This was not just a visual lure. It was something deeper. Ben tugged at her sleeve. "What is that, Mom?" "It feels scary," he said, shaking as the hum crescendoed. "I don't know," she replied, glancing back at the entryway. The shadows outside were originally held at bay, but now she could sense them, as if they were reaching, clawing at the thin veil between their worlds. In that moment, the glow intensified, blasting through the dim chamber, illuminating a series of crude carvings in the walls, depicting figures entwined in a dance frozen in ecstasy, faces twisted in terror. Emily could feel the air thickening, prickling against her skin. "Mom!" Ben's voice spiked in pitch. The ground trembled beneath them. "It's moving." "What is?" Emily shot back, panic clawing at her throat. She felt the vibrations notch up a level, coursing through her bones like a warning. The decorum of helplessness was wearing thin. They were cornered. Suddenly, the ground cracked, a fissure forming right in front of them. The pulsing glow dimmed. A wail rippled through the air, dissonant chants rising in a choir of desperate dread. And then the light shifted to an angry red. "Run!" Emily shot up, pulling her children up with her. The chamber wasn't safe anymore. The very walls seemed to tighten, elongating shadows twisting around but with no clear escape. They turned, frantically moving back toward the tunnel leading them out. Shadows lashed at their heels, breath hot on their necks. The sobs of a long-lost love echoed in their ears, an uncompromising reminder as they stumbled through the dark. The tunnel reformed. It constricted, twisting in ways that defied logic. Emily could feel the shadows closing in. It was like fighting through thick fog that threatened to swallow them whole. She screamed back to her children, "Keep running. Don't stop." Just as they reached the opening, the roar sounded again, feral and relentless. Emily pushed them through, but before she could follow, a cold hand, a whisper of a shadow clutched her ankle, pulling her back toward that terrible light. "Mom!" Ben shouted, reaching for her. With a burst of desperate strength, Emily kicked free, tearing herself away from the darkness. They tumbled out into the night, gasping in the frigid air. But just as they landed, another sound pierced the silence, a deep, hollow laughter rising behind them, echoing through the trees. Emily turned, eyes wide, as she faced the escape they thought they had found, now marred by a wicked new reality. "Where do we go now?" Lily trembled, voice barely above a whisper, eyes brimming with fear. In the distance, the forest waited, holding secrets that had only begun to awaken. What awaited them next in that desolate stretch? Would the shadows chase them into the unknown, or had they merely become part of the sinister game? Emily's chest heaved as she steadied herself, trying to silence the frantic pounding of her heart. The laughter drifted through the trees, curling around her like smoke, sinister and mocking. Shadows loomed in the corners of her vision, twisting and beckoning, urging her to stay. "Mom, we have to go." Ben's voice broke through the haze of dread, pulling her back to the moment. He grasped Lily's small hand tightly, the tremor in his fingers responding to the encroaching darkness. "Right, follow me," Emily shouted, pushing her feet into action despite the faint afterglow still dancing in her mind. The blaring warnings of the tunnel screamed at her, begging for escape, but the deep woods had transformed into a perilous expanse, blending night with demonic whispers. They raced through the forest, branches scratching at their skin like claws, the air cold and unsettling. Each step they took echoed of something powerful and unseen, pressing at their backs like a tangible weight, forcing them forward into the unknown. Emily dared to glance back, knowing she shouldn't. What she saw made her heart freeze, a dark mass unfurling from the tunnel, creeping like spilled ink across the ground. It writhed, contorting into grotesque shapes and figures, flickering from the light into shadow. It moved with determination, a predator on a relentless hunt. "Look out!" Ben cried, pulling Lily closer as a sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, uprooting the silence with a howl. It carried the whispers they had heard before, but now they were frantic, straining as if warning them of impending doom. "Keep moving," Emily shouted, her words punctuated with urgency. They pushed deeper into the woods, where the trees stood taller and tighter together, like sentinels guarding secrets best left uncovered. The murmurs bounced off the thick trunks, threatening to unveil something that lay far beneath the surface. Then, as they plunged into a deeper abyss between the looming pines, the ground shifted beneath them. Roots entangled their ankles, pulling back like the claws of some subterranean beast. Emily stumbled, falling to one knee and yanking at her daughter's arm in a desperate attempt to pull them both to safety. "Mom!" Lily cried, looking at the shadows that seemed to grow taller, closer, whispering the secrets that echoed in Emily's mind. "Don't look back, Lily. Just keep your eyes on me," Emily said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. With all her strength, she ripped them free from the hold of the earth, ignoring the sharp pain of scraping bark against her skin. But then, another sound emerged, a rustling, clawing, snapping noise as something moved within the underbrush. Emily gritted her teeth, knowing the shadows were not alone anymore. They were being hunted, and whatever it was, it craved the fear brewing in their hearts. Panic ignited within her as she pulled the children toward a small clearing. "We can't stop here," she urged, the oppressive weight of dread thickening as the laughter returned, now rich and layered, echoing back at them. Suddenly, all noises ceased. A suffocating silence replaced the chaos, as if the woods held their breath in anticipation. The shadows paused too, shifting subtly but no longer creeping. The air electrified, crackling with a dread that chilled Emily to the bone. "What's happening?" Ben squeaked, eyes wide with horror, glued to the darkness. Emily felt it then, a low vibration. It pulsed beneath their feet, creeping up from the depths of the earth. It beat like a war drum, guiding an unseen terror directly toward them. "No, no, no," Emily muttered, pleading for movement. They had to keep going, even though they felt like the last standing pins in a shadowy game, trapped in the sights of whatever was lurking, and what awaited them was beginning to reveal itself. The vibration intensified, thrumming through the ground as if some great beast beneath the earth was waking, its hunger insatiable. She felt it cascading toward them, and as it reached that clearing, everything went still once more. The only sound left was her ragged breathing, each inhale melding with the pervasive panic thick in the air. And suddenly, the ground ruptured, a chasm opening right at their feet, revealing depths that seemed to swirl with an impossible darkness, a doorway to something unimaginably sinister. "Mom!" Lily shrieked, as the very earth beneath them gave way, threatening to drag them into a nightmare they were not prepared to face. "Hold on," Emily yelled, grasping Ben with one arm and Lily with the other as the ground crumbled. But one glance into that abyss was enough to rip the last of their hope away. Deep within, something stirred, hungry and ancient, an entity that awaited their descent. "Where do we go now?" Ben's voice trembled, echoed by the void beneath. With the air thickening, reality warping around them, Emily realized this was only the beginning. They were entwined in an inescapable snare. Would they plunge into the bowels of terror below, or would the darkness from the shadows offer an even worse fate? And as they teetered on the brink, the figure of a man appeared at the edge of the void, smiling through the dark. What horrifying truth awaited in the depths below, and what sinister bargain would they be forced to make? Emily's heart pounded as she stood before the yawning chasm, its edges jagged like broken glass. "No, we're not going in there." She clutched Ben and Lily tighter, their eyes wide with terror, reflecting the swirling darkness below. "You can't escape your fate," Emily, the voice slithered through the air, deep and mocking. It was Mr. Hawkins, standing just beyond the edge of that abyss, an elongated shadow against the night. You awaken something ancient by disturbing the land. The shadows are hungry, and they crave what belongs to them. Just then, the air filled with a low rumble, cold laughter echoing around them as twisted forms began to creep up from the chasm, dark tendrils reaching out, clawing toward the light they radiated. Shadows morphed into the shapes of people, their faces contorted in silent screams. "Mom!" Ben cried, pulling Lily closer, his voice thick with desperation. "No!" Emily shouted, instinct rising within her. "We will not be claimed." She stepped forward, the urge to protect her children surging through her. They had faced too much to let fear dictate their actions now. Turning to her children, she whispered fiercely, "Listen to me. We're going to run right through them, and we're going to be safe." She could feel the vibrations of the ground, pulsing with dark energy, but her resolve hardened. On 3, 1, 2, 3, they bolted forward, rushing toward the figures surrounding the chasm. Panic threatened to take hold, but Emily's instincts propelled them through. They raced past the first few shadows, and to her horror, she could see their translucent forms flicker with rage. "Stop!" they wailed in unison, their voices desperate and sorrowful. In that instant, Emily felt something deep within her shift, a flicker of hope igniting as she remembered the knowledge uncovered in the old book. The spirits, the anguish of the land, they were lost souls seeking peace. "I'm sorry," she cried out, forcing the words toward them as they passed. "I didn't know." The shadows paused, their writhing forms stilling for just a heartbeat. "Help us," one of them urged, a hint of humanity bleeding through the malice. Emily seized that moment, sensing the connection, a bond born from shared pain. "We want to help you. We will make it right," she shouted, her voice raw with emotion. And in that moment of desperation, she reached out to the spirits, calling upon their anguish to serve as the foundation for their escape. "Together," Emily declared, as they plunged through a barrier of shadows. The energy surged, fueled by her fierce determination. The darkness around them roared and lashed back, but Emily squeezed her children's hands tighter, thrusting them forward. Light pierced the shadows, slicing through the blackness, illuminating the night like a beacon. The shadows shivered, their forms flickering as if caught between two worlds. Each spirit turned, their faces shifting between terror and gratitude. "Set us free," they whispered, almost begging, a chorus of souls resonating with Emily's heart. As they reached the edge of the trees, a crack appeared in the shadows, a rift of shimmering light that beckoned them. Emily felt the tension in the air shift, the oppressive weight loosening as hope charged forward. "Mom, we're going to make it," Ben shouted, his voice ringing with belief. "Yes, just a little further." Emily's breath quickened, the rift declaring their chance at survival. With one final push, they leapt through, emerging into a clearing bathed in moonlight. The air felt different, lighter, almost as if the weight of despair had lifted. They fell to the ground, gasping for breath, surrounded by a hush that felt sacred. They turned back, hearts racing as they watched the shadows disperse into form captured in the shimmering glow of the land's newfound peace. The spirits began to dissolve, their anguished faces relaxing into grateful smiles. In that moment, Emily and her children understood. They were free. But as morning light crept over the horizon, attendant shadows lingered just beyond the tree line, the remnants of the darkness that would always haunt. Emily hugged Ben and Lily tightly, the bond of love stronger than any fear. "We beat them," Emily whispered, her heart still tender with hope and sorrow, yet resolute in their victory. "And together we can face whatever else comes our way." As the sun broke over the clearing, the warmth pooling around them, Emily knew their battle wasn't truly over. There would always be remnants of darkness lurking. But she had reclaimed her power, her role as protector, as mother. "Let us go home," she said firmly as they took tentative steps back home to one another, where love and strength would light their path forward, rewriting their fate anew. And as they walked away from the remnants of the oil field behind, Emily knew they had stamped the darkness into submission. Laughter rang out, soft and innocent, echoing against the ancient trees, reclaiming the joy that had once danced in this land. But beneath the surface, past the whispers of shadows lingered, waiting a reminder that no darkness ever truly vanished, only transformed. Now, as the story draws to a close, the lesson echoes within us. Every battle fought brings us closer to understand that light is born from the depths of darkness. So what will you do? Will you let fear hold you back? Or will you stand and fight, just like Emily? Remember, subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now, and don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.